Hello YouTube, this is Sammy. Today I want to talk to you guys about something that's a bit deeper than my PhD videos. Today I'm going to talk about my experience with sexual abuse. Now, I'm not going to go into any details because I don't feel like it's necessary. I'll give you a basic outline of what happened, how it affected me, and how I've chosen to overcome it. And I do use that word chosen deliberately because I have chosen to move forward with my life. I have chosen not to let it affect me anymore. And I'm not saying that I'm successful every day. I'm not successful every day. There are some days, there are a lot of days still where it's it's almost debilitating and it's hard, but you know, you have to you can't stop living because something happened. It's either you move on with life or life moves on without you. So I just want to help those like me who are in this confused place and don't know where to go. Okay, so let me give you a brief history of events. So I was sexually abused by my cousin between the ages of 2 and 5. He raped me. There's there's no it's not a nice word, rape, but and a lot of times people try to put it in nicer terms. It doesn't matter that it happened to me when I was a child. It involved non-consensual sexual contact. This is a very hard subject to talk about. Forgive me if I cry at all. Forgive me if there's a lot of starts and stops. It's very hard to talk about in public because it's seen as such a shameful thing. And the thing is, the shame isn't cast on the one who did it. I still see him at family reunions. I still see him at family gatherings. And everybody expects that if I don't want to see him or talk to him, I have to avoid him, not the other way around. So the shame isn't cast on the person who did it, the shame is cast on the person who was abused. So it's still a hard thing to talk about, even if everybody knows. And in my family, that was the case. My mom walked in on it one time when it was happening, and the entire family knew about it, and it was never reported. And I wasn't allowed to talk about it. Whenever I tried to bring it up, it was kind of like, oh, that's not okay to talk about. But on also conversely, whenever I didn't want to talk about it, that was when somebody would bring it up. So it was a very paradoxical situation for me. And you don't think like, and I don't even think I can even tell how much it's messed with me. How much it has fucked up my head because I wasn't old enough to have a personality, or at least not much of one. I mean, I know 2-year-olds have personalities, they have very strong personalities, but you're not old enough to remember what you were like before, and people forget what you were like before. My mom tells me that I was always a really sweet child, and afterwards I was just very quiet. I liked to escape into my books, and I started eating to cope. And I mean, not all of this is because of him. I'm not entirely fat because of him, but it's messed with me. It's messed with my head. And it's also messed with my perception of men because a part of me will still always see my body as a thing to be used. And I suppose 5-year-old me thought, oh, if I gain enough weight, nobody will want to touch me. And it's kind of worked so far. Um, except for once, which was an entirely different traumatizing experience that I will talk about in a later video. I don't think I have the emotional fortitude to do that tonight. I don't know. It messes with your head. The nightmares. Now, I've never actually told anybody this except for one person, but I'm going to tell all of you because sharing is caring or something. I don't know. From the time I was very little, I had nightmares about being tied up and raped. I'm sure some people would say they were just nightmares, but I'm sorry. How many 5-year-olds do you know who have nightmares about that kind of stuff? It messes with your mind. It messes with your sexuality because, there was a while where I was like, I can't be interested in guys because guys are the ones who did this to me. But I have to remember that no, not all guys did this to me. One guy did this to me. Um, so, it messes with everything. Um, I'm more guarded because of it. I didn't like being touched for the longest time. Like, every touch felt like a bad touch. There really is no way to completely quantify all of the harm that it's done to me and to my psyche. As for what I'm doing about it, so I have been going to therapy now for about 2 years. About 2 years ago, I entered a group therapy program at my school for sexual assault survivors. I won't share any of their stories because that is completely confidential and that is between them and the group. But for any of you who are wondering about group therapy or who are thinking about going to group therapy, I strongly urge you to do so. Group therapy for me was extremely cathartic because it showed me that there were other people out there who went through very similar things to me. Now, I obviously don't like the fact that other people had to suffer like I did, but sexual abuse survivors, sexual assault survivors go through life with the idea that they're alone because their abuser isolated them. You don't often see, I mean, obviously, there are cases where multiple people were assaulted at once or where multiple people ganged up on one person. There are cases of that, but for the most part, it's an extremely, like, the perpetrator is trying to get the child alone. And so you're always alone when it happens, and after that, nobody wants to talk about it, or nobody knows about it, and you're told that if you tell, something bad will happen. And so overall, it's a very isolating experience. So, okay. I don't know where I was going with that. Where was I going with that? Right, so group therapy. It helps you feel like you're not alone. It also it allows you to experience grief by hearing other people's grief. like, it allows you to empathize with them and therefore empathize with yourself. Because sexual abuse survivors hate themselves. They blame themselves. Okay, I shouldn't say that as a blanket statement. I blamed myself. I thought I had done it. I thought I had caused it. I thought it was my fault. I thought that because of the abuse, we moved down to Florida and the whole family was miserable. I, in my 5-year-old mind, because it happened around the same time, I thought that because I had taken part in this horrible thing, that we had moved away from our entire family. And I carried that burden until group therapy, where I started talking about it, and that gave me the courage to talk to my mother about it. Where she told me, no, we were already planning to move to Florida. So, yeah. But the thing is, then a lot of people don't understand is that it's not just what happens that scars you. It's what you think about what happens that scars you as well. So, since I thought I had been the cause of us moving to Florida, that was an extra insult to injury. Yeah, self-blame. I'm trying to keep this organized in my head, but it's kind of slipping away from me. And so group therapy. Um Yes, so I strongly urge you to go to group therapy, but if you're going to do it, I also recommend getting a personal therapist that you can talk to one-on-one afterward, because group therapy is an extremely emotional experience. Do not go to group therapy if you have class afterwards, if you have work afterwards. Try to make it something that it's, for me, this is what I did. This was during my second semester of my master's degree, and I went to group therapy in the morning. I went to one-on-one therapy straight afterward, and then I went to volunteer at a an organization for abused children, because for me that also helped me to feel as though I was doing something to help the people who were like me. Now, whether I was actually doing that much help, I mean, I was just the receptionist, a volunteer receptionist for 4 hours once a week. But every little bit helps, you know? So I did that for a whole semester, and then afterwards, um, I focused on school because I was graduating the next semester, and I really had to focus on school. So I stopped going to group, but I feel like one semester, for me at least, that was what I needed to get me in the right mind frame, to get me to start forgiving myself. Because by empathizing with those other people in that room, I saw myself in them, and by saying, no, it's not their fault, I could realize that it wasn't my fault either. I could start to forgive myself. And speaking of forgiveness, I know a lot of people say that you have to forgive your perpetrator. Now, that is entirely subjective. That is up to you. I don't like it when people tell me I have to forgive him, because I don't forgive him. He's a piece of scum. And I don't have to forgive him. I had to forgive myself. I'll probably do another video on this later. My mother was emotionally abusive. I forgave her for that because I love my mother. I hold no love for him. He does not deserve my forgiveness. I deserve my forgiveness. I deserve to love myself. He does not deserve it. So you can choose to forgive your abuser if you would like to. That is entirely a personal choice, and nobody can tell you to do it if you don't want to do it. What you really need to do is forgive yourself, because that is the most important thing. And once you forgive yourself, you can start to love yourself. Do I love myself every day? No. However, at least I love myself more than 0%, which is what I was loving myself before. I probably love myself 70% of the time these days. And I forgive myself for more. If, like, I mean, I obviously still struggle with my weight. If I have an extra cookie, I don't beat myself up about it anymore. And that actually helps me manage my food intake better, because I don't feel like I have to beat myself up after every misstep. I can forgive myself for that, and that keeps it from happening again. All right, continuing in my journey to recovery, I did a lot of work with an individual therapist, and I had a lot of breakthroughs. I can't really tell you what each and every one of them was. Um, but I can tell you, you have to let yourself access your anger. You have to let yourself process that, because if you keep your anger inside, you keep directing it at yourself. And that's what really hurts you. If you keep directing your anger at yourself, you're not directing it at the right place. And it's going to eat you up inside. Breakthroughs I had. I watched a Lacey Green video about how virginity was a social construct. And that actually helped me a lot. So thank you, Lacey. Um, because what she said and what I kind of realized from this video was that, you know, society kind of imposes, especially on females, this idea of virginity and your purity, and how you should only give it to one man, and how if you don't, you are a whore. You're a slut, you're dirty, you're damaged. And you don't realize when you're growing up how much you internalize those messages. And when you've been raped, especially at such a young age, you kind of feel like that your virginity's been taken, and everything in society tells you that you're dirty, that you're damaged, that you will never be loved because you're a whore. And all of those horrible things that nobody should ever have to think about themselves. Nobody should ever think about another person like that. And even, I mean, I've caught myself thinking that about myself, about other people, and it horrifies me sometimes. So I realized after watching that video that, just because I wasn't technically a virgin anymore, just because I didn't have that purity of soul or something like that, just because I didn't have that anymore, doesn't mean I don't have it anymore, if that makes any sense. Because you are what you think yourself to be. And if I think of myself as dirty, damaged, the words damaged goods have actually left my mouth on several occasions in reference to myself. And if you think about yourself that way, then how is anybody else supposed to not think about you that way? I just realized that I couldn't let society's stupid morality, I mean, that's not even a good morality. Like, that's not even be good to your neighbor or don't kill people. I mean, that's just like, what's the point? What's the point of that? What's the point of telling a girl that just because she has been touched by a guy, she's worthless? What is the point? What is the point of telling a 5-year-old that because a guy touched her, she's damaged. Right. I should probably continue this video at a later time. And yes, this is probably going to become a series of videos about my recovery process with that as well. So, I wonder if this could be considered a rant. It kind of turned into a rant. I'm not going to apologize for that because it is my right to post YouTube videos that turn into rants about things like the morality of virginity. I will leave this as it is, and I will still post it even though I'm very close to tears right now. Whew. All right, things are good. So I will talk to you guys later, and I hope you guys have a good night. Thank you for watching.